thinking about John Wayne.
Welcome to Destroyer Escort Historical Museum. Here you will explore the pivotal role played by a unique class of warship, the Destroyer Escort, and learn about the sailors who manned them to achieve ultimate victory during the Second World War. The rise of fascism in Germany and Japan and Italy during the 1930s was accompanied by a level of brutal genocide without parallel in modern history. The conquest of Europe by Nazi Germany and of China and the Pacific nations by Japan presented a grave threat to democracy, and destroyer escorts played a key role in countering that threat. By 1940, England stood alone as the last bastion of freedom in Europe against fascist tyranny. Never before had the forces of good and evil been so clearly defined. In order to stop Hitler's oppression, it was imperative that England be given the supplies and arms they needed to continue the fight. As an island nation, England was completely dependent upon the sea and ships to receive the food, supplies, and munitions she needed. In America, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt recognized their need and understood the severity of the situation. He proclaimed the United States to be the arsenal of democracy and promised that the United States would do everything in its power to send the British supplies they needed to survive.
They ask us for the implements of war, planes, tanks, guns, freedom, to enable them to fight for their liberty and our security. We have furnished the British great materials, and we will furnish far more in the future.
This just started a
There
minute
will
ago.
be no bottleneck in our determination to aid Great Britain.
Hitler was well aware of the plight of the British and recognized that their only hope lay with American merchant ships crossing the Atlantic. He knew that if his navy could sever the lifeline of ships, the British would starve and be forced to surrender. To accomplish this goal, Hitler deployed a fleet of submarines to sink any Allied ships that crossed their paths. The U-boats became so effective that they began to sink ships faster than the Allied powers could build them. From 1941 to 1942, the situation looked very bleak as more and more ships and their valuable cargoes were torpedoed and sunk. The Battle of the Atlantic proved to be the longest and most costly battle of World War II. The fate of the world and the fate of freedom itself depended on the outcome of this great battle. To counter the U-boat threat, Allied merchants began to travel in large convoys protected by escort vessels with submarine detection equipment and depth charges to attack the U-boats. The Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, brought the United States fully into war. American industry accelerated production and began to produce an outpouring of ammunitions, aircraft, and ships, the likes of which the world had never seen. American naval architects quickly developed a new type of warship called the destroyer escort to finally solve the problem of escorting convoys and protect the merchant ships from the threat of Nazi woolpacks. These ships were designed to be scaled-down destroyers. Very maneuverable, their weapons and sensors were designed specifically to find and sink submarines. Their crews were mostly made up of naval reservists, officers, and sailors, barely out of their teens, who were trained at a special school in Miami following their basic training. As these new ships began to enter the fight in the latter half of 1943 and 1944, the tide finally began to turn against the U-boats. Coupled with the mass production of Liberty and Victory cargo ships, radio intelligence, and the use of long-range patrol aircraft, U-boats were now being sunk faster than the Nazis could build them. In addition to protecting the convoys, destroyer escorts began to operate with small escort carriers in hunter-killer groups to hunt down and sink U-boats located through radio intelligence. As the United States Navy fought their way through the Pacific during the island hopping campaign, destroyer escorts were there to protect the troop ships by sinking Japanese submarines and shooting down enemy aircraft. During the Battle of Samar, destroyer escorts supported the invasion fleet and found themselves unexpectedly facing the main Japanese battle fleet. Over the course of 4 hours, destroyer escorts were forced to battle a much larger fleet despite being heavily outgunned. DEs also protected the oil tankers and supply ships that replenished our fleet at sea, enabling the Navy to continue to fight the Japanese without having to return to port so often for supplies. By the end of the war, 563 destroyer escorts were built, including 78 that were transferred to the British Navy. Many were converted to high-speed transports to carry underwater demolition teams. These would be the forerunners of the famous Navy SEALs. Sadly, 13 destroyer escorts were sunk by enemy action in American service, and another 15 were lost while in British service. After the war, the destroyer escorts were scrapped, but many went into mothballs, also known as the reserve fleet. A few remained active to train naval reservists. But in 1975, the United States Navy reclassified all remaining destroyer escorts as frigates, and the term destroyer escort disappeared from naval inventory. Although often forgotten about in the pages of history, the destroyer escorts of World War II performed exceptionally well and played a vital role in securing victory for the Allies.
Mr. Slater right here. Mr. Slater, he's a brother. He's a brother to the ship.
I was going to name. It was named for my brother, in honor of my brother, who was killed at Guadalcanal in 1942 on November the 12th. And he was a gunner aboard the San Francisco cruiser. And in an air attack, the plane shot him down and crashed on his station. He was awarded the Navy Cross, and then they named the ship after him in his honor.
We are proud to present USS Slater, DE 766, the last destroyer escort afloat in America. Meticulously restored to her 1945 configuration by hard-working volunteers, she survives today as a tribute to the sailors who took DEs into harm's way, to the important mission they performed, and the countless lives they saved.
Any